Hello, meteorologist Ted Keller with a look at the lower 48, the visible satellite loop. It's a calm weather pattern, I will say, as we start to get into the more fall like pattern here. We aren't really seeing any large storms. We're seeing a couple of disturbances here and there. We'll certainly highlight those, but nothing going on really. So we'll take a look at the 500 millibar flow and see what's going on there. Weak disturbances for the most part, except for a pretty strong cyclone aloft coming ashore in Northern California there. But otherwise, this is sort of a split trough here that's kind of weakly moving through Missouri, right along the Mississippi River, actually. There's a couple of showers and maybe a rumble of thunder there. This is certainly the more significant thunderstorm activity. We'll highlight that in a minute. And this is actually causing now mostly a cooler weather pattern for what was a pretty hot northwest there for a while. Take a look at the surface map. And you can see a cool front is moving through California, and by extension, this area up here is definitely seeing a cooler air mass. This front is continuing to stall. All the fronts that have come down in the last week and a half or so and provided all that cool fall-like air have gotten about this far installed, and you can even see a little bit of a wave or a low-pressure area right around there off the Carolina coast. So this front will actually impact rainfall mostly in Florida. We'll show you that in a minute. And this front, for a change, is not going to make any significant progress more to the south as the jet stream flow is fundamentally changing, at least for the time being. But still, much of the country is enjoying very mild temperatures, even cool for this time of year. Bangor, Maine, 64 degrees. Chicago, 74 degrees. 55 in the UP of Michigan. Denver, 77. The hot stuff is in Texas with Amarillo and Lubbock, both in the 90s. And so let's take a look and see what kind of trends we can look for in temperature. And the first thing we're going to do is look at, this is the European mean. This is the ensemble. So it's going to take a look at the 500 millibar flow, average it over the next 7 days, essentially. It actually started last night. So it's going to go through the 8th, starting on the Monday, yesterday, and then go through this coming Sunday, basically. So what you're seeing here is a little bit of a tendency for the 500 millibar flow to dip southward here. So kind of a troughiness pattern. So when you see the blue, that means, yeah, compared to what we normally see, this is a little bit below normal, meaning these lines are sagging southward more than they might normally. Whereas this right here in Canada represents a huge area where the heights have risen. So this is basically bulging northward. So you usually find hot air underneath ridges like this and cooler air underneath troughs. So you still see a tendency for the southeastern U.S. to be slightly cool. Also, any hurricanes that develop, and there aren't any, but if there was one and it approached here, it would be deflected pretty quickly off to the northeast. So this is a hot trend here and a cool trend here, and these are a little more significant. In fact, if you take a look at the same model, but now we switch from 500 millibars to just surface temperatures, you definitely see exactly what I was just talking about. So there's a real tendency now for below normal readings in California, Nevada, Oregon, Idaho, and even parts of Colorado and Utah. And in the Northeast, again, the eastern seaboard is still averaging a little bit below normal, and certainly heating up there in Western Canada and across the Midwest and the northern Great Plains as well. Let's take a look at some high temperature patterns. So I live in Springfield. We've enjoyed some very cool air. Finally, tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to get up to about 90. Now, a couple weeks ago, that wouldn't have been a big deal, but now, of course, the normals are starting to slip down. So looking at the colors here, this is not the temperature. The colors are the whether these readings are above or below normal. So now 90 is all of a sudden showing up a little bit on the hot side, a little darker orange, and that 89 there in Montana is really showing up as much above normal. You can definitely see the cooler trends on the coast and a little bit, well, actually the Great Lakes are just affecting the temperatures there. That's why those are green. But look what happens on Friday. We're looking at readings that will go well into the 90s. 96 is what's in the forecast for my town here, but 90s from Texas to Canada almost. Well, upper 80s up there in the northern plains, certainly. Still cool in the west. Still, the cool on the east is wearing off a little bit. And then by Sunday into the weekend, still pretty darn hot. I was thinking about doing some power washing at the house. I thought maybe my really hot days to do that are done. Just so happens that the weekend is going to line up with the hottest temperature, so I just found my chore for this coming weekend. So overall, though, you're noticing that the overall temperature pattern is not changing. The hot air bubble is centered right there. The cool air in the west continues, and the east kind of trickles away a little bit. And you can see that in the official outlook from Monday through Friday. So that's 6 days from now, 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. Pretty high confidence right here in the upper Mississippi Valley into the Missouri River Valley, are pretty hot temperatures. And then even though it's cool out here now, they are forecasting it to get hotter again on the coast, West Coast, and still staying pretty cool. New York City down to North Carolina and Boston. Let's take a look at if there's any severe weather potential out there. Well, in my videos here recently, we really haven't had a whole lot of severe weather outlooks worth mentioning. We do have one today for the remainder of this evening and until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, Central Daylight, this level 2 out of 5 risk, and it coincides with a severe thunderstorm watch that has been hoisted for the exact same area. So traveling along I-70, Garden City's in this, and a lot of the counties there in eastern Colorado, pretty isolated areas, but still some storms have already formed. Denver is not included in this, nor is the corridor from Fort Collins down to Pueblo. But let's take a look at a radar. I think this was snapped. That was snapped about 5:40 or so, and you're seeing one thunderstorm producing hail there, ready to cross just along and south of I-70. And a couple of other smattering of storms here and there. Now, what about heavy rain potential? After what seemed like weeks and weeks and weeks of talking about all kinds of pockets of heavy rain, this has really settled down quite a bit. The only three things worth noting are South Florida, maybe parts of Colorado and New Mexico, and then this area up here. And we'll talk about these individually. So we'll go up to Montana, where they're forecasting an inch and a half. Now, this is over the next 7 days. So I'm really just kind of giving you an overview. I'll give you the exact dates on this coming up here in a couple of slides. And then interestingly, Florida is forecast to have 3 or 4 inches of rain in the southern half of that state, but there's no official advisory of heavy rain in that area. I think it's because it goes out of the forecast for what I'm about to show you here, which is the 3 to 7 day hazard. So today's Tuesday. This would be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we're looking at heavy rain kind of arcing its way through Wyoming and Montana up into the Dakotas as we get into that time frame right there. Now, if we do look at the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, it does highlight a pretty high confidence in Florida of some above normal rain. But we're certainly getting rain down here in the southwest, which could use it, and in Montana and Wyoming. So not real surprising. Kind of dry in Louisiana and in the eastern lakes and parts of New England as well. Let's take a look at the tropics as we approach the peak of hurricane season. Let's see if there's anything going on at all. And the answer to that question is no, at least not in the Atlantic. And remember last week we were really intensely watching this area here for Gabrielle possible development. In fact, there was a 90% probability at one point that we were going to see something form out here. Well, dry air and an favorable environment just snapped that probability right out of the picture. So we are still looking at these named storms so far. Gabrielle did not form. And so we're looking at Gabrielle, Humberto, all on the list. But again, not a whole lot of high probability of anything forming in a season that's still forecast to be above normal. Actually, that's wrong. This was reduced to 50%, not much different. But so we're going to have to do some work to get that forecast to work out right. Let's see if there's anything down the stretch. This is a weekly forecast that's issued for the Atlantic, actually for the Pacific too. But this is week 2 and week 3. So they are looking at the Azores here with some maybe high probability, certainly very high probability off the southern coast of Mexico. And then look at this. So week 3, this is the last week of September basically. This indicates to me that any storms that form here are not really doing well as they move westward. Whereas the Gulf is showing some interesting signs possibly of seeing some development as well. Now, if we do go out to the Pacific, we have what was Hurricane Kiko now, a tropical storm. This is the island chain of Hawaii right here. And this is the IR loop. So what we're seeing is if you want strong thunderstorm activity, you want them to be perking up into the upper part of the atmosphere, in which case they would be cold, and you'd see the tops like that in the red. But you only see just recently just kind of a redevelopment of activity there. But the core of this storm is just a circulation now with very little deep convective activity going along the line. And one time, they thought it might approach the Hawaiian Islands. And sometimes these storms do. This one seemed, of course, it was really just a targeting issue because it would have at least impacted the islands a little more significantly had it gone more south, but that was not the case, and it did weaken considerably. And then the last thing we'll look at is what's going on in the Pacific over the next 7 days. And it kind of mirrors that 2 and 3 week forecast with a lot of pretty high probability. This is a 90% probability of something forming off the southern coast of Mexico over the next 7 days. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.